a story that we did want to get to today is from the American Prospect. Put that element up there that I don't know my glasses.
It says
redeeming or redefining.
It says
reclaiming?
You're actually wrong about both. It's reclaiming. Okay, reclaiming. You got it in the third try.
So reclaiming the deep state. This is a story about OIRA, which is an office that was created to try to kind of coordinate between different agencies as they're producing regulations. Ended up becoming one of the most powerful executive agencies that nobody has heard of. And in the 1980s, and then also, as the Prospect writes, during the Obama years, it was used actively to thwart the regulatory apparatus, to slow down regulation. Under Biden, and actually significantly under the influence of Elizabeth Warren, as the story kind of, the undertone of the Prospect story makes clear, because these are all kind of Warren people who are making for the most part, that are making these moves. And her philosophy has always been personnel as policy, and she's trying to get her people into the particular positions so that they can then enact the policies that she's for. She has always cared far more than kind of the Bernie Sanders, for instance, with the administrative state, with using the levers of power that exist. She most famously burst onto the scene with her idea to create the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which now exists. She shepherded into law. She helped, and she set it up as its first kind of director, and which has become the bane of Wall Street and the bane of a lot of corporations that are kind of pushing the envelope on what they're on the way that they're allowed or not allowed to scam customers. And so what's going on now in the Biden administration is that this agency, which has for so long been designed and deployed to slow down regulatory activities, actually now been emboldened and empowered to work with agencies to try to speed up the process and toughen regulations. And people are saying that they've never seen anything like it, that a regulation would come to OIRA, and OIRA comes back and says, I think you can do better than this. Come on. Crank this up a little bit.
Yeah.
Like 30 parts per million, move this to 100 parts per million. People are going to die.
Yeah.
And the agency's like, really?
It's an interesting story. I was glad that you sent this around, Ryan, because it's an interesting story when you juxtapose it with Jonathan Swan's report in Axios just about a month ago about how a huge priority of another Trump administration. So say he ran for president again, was elected, this would, by the way, be, if Trump didn't run, any other Republican would basically pick this up. On, what is it, Schedule
F.
Yeah, Schedule F. Basically dismantling the so-called deep state, the administrative state, the bureaucracy, the federal bureaucracy, call it whatever you want. That's a huge plank of the conservative plan going forward. And that's why I think the language here even is really funny, reclaiming the deep state. From whom? Because in my perspective, any sort of conservative or Republican claiming ownership over the deep state or over the administrative state is fundamentally not conservative or Republican, because there's nothing conservative or Republican about sort of the sprawling mass of unelected, powerful officials that are now essentially regulating in ways that used to be reserved, powers that used to be reserved for our elected officials in Congress, and it's spiraled so far out of control that's why Republicans say, if you have a Republican president, it is like trying to turn the Titanic around in 4 years at the administrative state, because in Washington, D.C., everyone sort of knows so-called careers in the cabinet agencies are overwhelmingly left. That doesn't mean that they're all leftists. It means that they're sort of center left for the most part. But that means that if you're Donald Trump, or if you're Jeb Bush for that matter, and you take control of the EPA, good luck doing anything with that EPA. You might be able to do some things here or there, nibble around the edges, but the EPA still exists. Right. Right? So from your perspective, it's going to be like 4 years of trying to turn the Titanic around. So what you have to do is start, working on.
Just got to sink that Titanic.
Well,
and then
I don't know.
Build a new one. Everybody can get a raft, and if you don't get a raft, then hey, you sink or swim.
I mean, listen, we just talked about in the last segment Title IX, and it's a great example. The Obama administration changed dramatically what was happening at every single publicly funded school, and actually basically every school because of the legal precedent that it kind of established, with a letter called the Dear Colleague letter from John King that it reinterpreted Title IX on sexual assault and reinterpreted Title IX to include gender identity. And so a lot of these fights that we're having about transgenderism in local schools and sports, whatever it is, would probably have been better litigated at the local level. But because they were changed in one fell swoop by the Obama administration under people's noses, I think it was Camille Paglia who said she was like, I knew Hillary Clinton was going to lose as soon as I saw what the Obama administration did out of their education department. So conservatives see that stuff and say, well, we get into the education department, maybe it doesn't need to be abolished, although Betsy DeVos, I think, recently did say that. But what is the point of just taking back a letter that then Joe Biden is going to get in office and use the education department exactly like Barack Obama did?
So I think that's a slightly different case because those are fundamental policy differences that you're carrying out as an executive, whereas what OIRA is doing here and what the deep state and the administrative state are fighting over are who gets to set the policies and what the process for them is. And so
I just think that's a policy in and of itself.
It is, and the way that it expresses itself in a partisan divide on the left, say, who are we reclaiming it from? We're reclaiming it from corporate America.
Yes,
We're saying that
yes.
corporate America has, through the 70s and 80s and 90s, has basically captured these regulatory agencies, that they're wholly owned subsidiaries of the corporations that they're supposed to actually be regulating on behalf of the people. And so we're reclaiming it for the people, where I'm curious how the right would define it, but in the best light, you'd say, well, Trump, let's say Trump wins, therefore Trump's allies ought to be able to set whatever policy they want. And then the left will be like, well, yeah, but it's just a bunch of CEOs and corporate VPs and lobbyists that you're installing in all these places. And it's like, hey, elections have consequences. So, yeah. And then we'd be like, well, how is that populist? Like, where's the people power there?
Well, remember, this is my favorite thing to look back on, how the head of the State Department, the Secretary of State, was the CEO of Exxon. People did that, and we're like,
yeah. People were like, he has no experience in this. Like, no. See, the CEO of Exxon has plenty of experience that's relevant to being the state.
He knows exactly what he's doing.
Yeah,
100%. Yeah, no. But the point that I would make is post-Wilsonian, the post-Wilsonian sort of post-Rooseveltian administrative state, the corporate capture of it, I think, is absolutely real, and that's sort of fundamentally an argument against it, because there's really no way to have a bureaucracy that is this vast and even hard to quantify.
Although this is one way.
Well, is it though? I mean, plausibly something, like, is it legitimately a bulwark? Say it happens. And this is a great question, actually. I don't have a good answer for it. If it happens, is this an impenetrable bulwark? Or is it just a sort of stopgap?
Everything, I think, is a stopgap because the war never ends and the fight never stops. But you're seeing on the regulatory front, significant wins that industry is really pissed about. So in that sense, it's at least working for now.
And it's really interesting going forward to see what would happen, whether it's Joe Biden in a second term, whether it's Kamala Harris in a second term, what would happen if they took seriously plans like this to, as you say, reclaim from corporate America the bureaucracy.
Yeah, we'll see, because they're definitely going to try to, corporate America is going to try to undermine this badly, kind of destroy all these individual people. That's the problem with personnel as policy, because then they just destroy the people.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.